Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. As we do always, we'll start this off with a date stamp. This one is year 3, blog 4. In legacy numbers, that's blog 108, and it's dated the 17th of March 2024. And we're heading very, very quickly towards Easter. I'm looking forward to having a couple of days break, finding it very difficult at the end of the day when work finishes to keep awake. It's a little bit better, not that much, not enough to make a big impact. I've noticed I'm starting to feel drowsy and fall asleep now about 7 o'clock-ish at night, and I finish work between 4 and 5. And normally what was happening, about a month or so back, before I got this new pillow actually that Denny advised, I would sit in the chair straight after work and I'd be asleep by 5 o'clock. So there is a couple of hours extra but not enough to make your life worthwhile. I still feel drowsy watching a film. I can't watch a film all the way through generally, or a TV program. It's a hindrance. When I try to play a game that might get my brain involved, I start getting double vision. So, yes, couple of things that need to be sorted out, but I am going in for a blood test in the next couple of weeks. I am seeing a face-to-face doctor appointment. My God, finally came out the blue. I got a text message saying these were the dates and times available. So immediately I put myself down. I've started to write things down that I need to explain. And hopefully I can get back on track. I'm not totally convinced that some of this is not tablet orientated, but I also can't put out the fact that there could be a deeper problem. As I said, I've been a snivelly and I've put a lot of things down to being a chest infection. I've been going for a walk and feeling a tightness out here. That makes me sort of cough, and then after I've coughed, and it's like a coughing fit while you're walking along the road, I then start to breathe better and I feel normal. So I don't think it's anything heart related, otherwise there'd be a problem, but it could be oxygen blockage, could be anything. I'm speculating, shouldn't speculate. So the weather's not been great today. It was quite nice yesterday. I even thought about, won't be close before I start doing that first cut on the lawn, where you raise the mower, high as possible so that you're not scuffing up the ground, and then lower it for the next one. But it rained overnight, and it's totally wet out there, so that's the wrong thing to do. My uncle came midweek, and he brought his angle grinder and he cut the blade on the mower, but did say that I need to get some oil. So that's going to be a bit of a task because I've never tried to change the oil on a petrol mower. I know you change the oil on a car, there's a sump, but I'm not so sure on petrol mowers. So that's going to be a bit tricky. My dad would have done all of those jobs, and he was a mechanic in his early days, and he knew all about engines, oil, petrol, carburetors, spark plugs, all of that. He hated new cars. He said that they're all geared now towards you putting a piece of electrical equipment to diagnose things. He said you can't get your spanners down the side of the engine. how are you supposed to work on these things? And in some ways I have to agree. But I'm not a mechanic. But I'm digressing a little bit. The start of the week started poorly, but ended on a high. The people that brought my new internet in, they sent a young lad. Nothing wrong with that. And I brought him round to the house to tell him where the internet needs to come into, and it needs to come into this room, which is at the back of the house. And he went, "Oh, can't do that." And I went, "What do you mean you can't do it?" And he said, "Well, he's not experienced enough to do flat roof installations." And I said, "Well, it's not a flat roof. You would have to walk along a flat roof to get your wire. But that's about it as far as I know." "Yeah, but I'm not allowed to. I have to get a flat roofer to actually do this installation." And I said, "Well, it's not your fault." I said to him, it's just I'm disappointed. Sky knew the last installation, which was only 2.5 years ago, when they changed it to a Q box. They knew full well what the layout of the house was then, and they never asked the pertinent question when they're negotiating about where your installation needs to be and whether it would need to be a custom type installation. So again, down point for my internet service provider. But anyway, he came up with a solution. Not a fantastic one, but basically it was throw the fiber optic line across the flat roof so that it reached the corner of the back of this house, and then drag the wire along. The only thing he'd need to do, which I suppose to him is illegal, would be he'd have to get onto the flat roof just to put a bracket when the wire is in place so that it doesn't move with the wind, which I totally understood. I said, "Yeah, that's when you need to stand on a flat roof, so yeah, can understand the problem." So anyway, he told me he wasn't going to do it, so I phoned up Sky just to say, "Look, you're going to need to rebook this," and I just wanted to explain to you what the guy explained to me. And he came round the door and told me to put the phone down just as I was about to speak to a representative. And he said, "I've spoken to my gaffer and we're going to do it." I went, "All right, not a problem." The only thing I can say really is, and I don't know if it's because I've worked in service, type roles, he just came across very bolshy. I suppose it's the wrong word to use, because the right word to use would be, don't go beyond what you're allowed to do. Work exactly as the crib sheet says. And I think his crib sheet says, this is what he can do, this is the installation, this is what I'm going to do at the end, and then I'm going to say goodbye. Which is a bit rigid, if you think about it, because part of the installation says that you need to have a plug spare for the open reach box. Now, I've got an old open reach box, and it has a plug to it, and that plug is under my desk, but I don't know whether it uses the same power supply. In fact, here's the power supply here. Just a standard, let's see, what is it? 12 volt, 1 amp plug lead with a Denny type end. And so I made a plug spare, but not the one I'd eventually like to use. And my idea was, once he's got the signal in and the lights go green, it won't be hard for me to ask him, can we just now unplug that and I'll feed it under the desk and put it into the same slot as the old one? And he said, no. And I went, what do you mean no? And he said, you can do that after I'm gone, but my job is to make sure that this signal is going in, test it, prove it works, and that is it. And I said, yeah, but I just want to change the plug. I mean, I know unplugging it will turn those green lights off, but hopefully you'll be here and, the lights will come back on. That's at your own risk, sir, he said. And quite rightly looked at it, saw the lights were okay and said, right, now I'm off. Not great, that, is it? I mean, you're asking for a plug to be unplugged and plug it into a socket that's 3 foot under this desk. I mean, how hard's that? You know what I mean? If his work conditions are so bad that unplugging it causes it to undo everything that he just did, he had a very good engineer, as far as I'm concerned. But I risked it, unplugged it, put it in, and everything was fine. No problems. It was just I wanted his little bit of help, and to make sure, have that little bit of assurance, what they call assurance, that everything was going to be okay. And no, wouldn't do that. So that took a couple of hours. I got back to work, finished off the rest of the day, did a speed test, and the speed hadn't changed. So I just phoned up my provider just quickly and said, does it take time for the old service to be disconnected and the new service? And they said, yes, it does. But I can see we've started that switch over. Should be within the next hour, he said. And the weird thing was that I've got several PCs. The PC under the desk here, which is my oldest PC, started showing very fast connection, like 500 megabits per second. My laptop's Wi-Fi was picking up the same speed increase, but my main PC stuck at the old signal, and I didn't know why. So then I started to look at my connections, and they were fine. But what happened was, and this is just something that you learn, that when I boot my machine up, the VPN boots up with it. And the VPN, at some point, I don't know quite when, had created a bridge to what they call the Ethernet connector. It's a bridge connection. And it had speed limited it. It might well be actually that I put that speed limit on when I was a couple of years ago, when I was doing load balancing for torrent sites, where in the software you can do that, but I wanted to do it at hardware level so that it never went over what I wanted it to do. Anyway, deleted all of the network connections in the device manager, rebooted, it discovered all of the network connections again, set themselves back up. Before I did that, I turned the VPN off. And hey presto, full speed. Brilliant. And then I turned the VPN on, still full speed. So it was just it must have been a bridge connection issue. And that was great. Made me feel, wow, yeah, you remembered something from years back that caused you a problem, and you diagnosed it quite well. So yeah, I was quite pleased with myself. So then I went back to the familiar old problem that Mamemeister had a couple of weeks ago, where his account was blocked. And every week I keep going back to them to say what's going on. And nobody is around to fix my problem. So it's out of sight, out of mind for most of my friends in Discord. They don't talk about it, but for me it's still a living nightmare that I can't download things from one of the favourite torrent sites. I don't use torrents very much. I use still the old newsgroup methods. But it's still a problem, and it nags at you. Do you know what I mean? And it made me think as well that this was a big thing when Mamemeister talked about it in his own Discord, but there are people that this still affects, and people are not talking about it anymore. And I feel a bit left behind, like, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Or all this sort of stuff. Which goes along with last week when I was talking about if you don't feel part of something anymore, if you get that into that dark place with loneliness. So, this week has been a bit of a strange week because there was another thing that happened I met my manager for the first time. He actually came to visit me. That was a wonderful visit. Shook hands, had a chat, wrote down what they call my career foundation, which is really just an appraisal type thing. And what you're supposed to do is fill in things that you've done that meet 5 competencies. And there's a disclaimer at the top that says that this document is a collaboration between your manager and yourself, the worker, and that it is the manager's responsibility to fill in tasks that allow you to meet the competency required within a year. And it fully came about that that's not happened, which is what I've been complaining about for ages. I said I want to do some bigger projects and some jobs that stretch my brain, and I feel I'm just slotted in. And so every day in the daily tasks, I say exactly what I'm doing, and at the end of every week, I turn around and say that whether it's been a good week or a bad week, or whether I've learnt anything new, and most of the time, there's nothing new to add. So my manager's finally seen this and went, yeah, we've got to change this. But he did say the one thing he can't do is lie on the sheet. But what he did say was that he'll embellish. That was the word he used. And I went, yeah, I'm not asking anybody to lie, but I'm also wanting a disclaimer at the end that says it's not this person's fault. How can I keep saying every week the same thing and then managers just ignore it? That's not my fault. And why should I be hindered, career-wise or pay review-wise, when I've been screaming left, right, till I'm black and blue about having some more jobs that stretch my abilities? And he agreed, and he said that won't happen next year. But all he can do is embellish, exuberate, go to my task manager, see if he can do the same thing, get you what you can for this year and make sure that it doesn't happen. And I said, well, okay. But you're going to have to put a disclaimer at the bottom, whichever way you look at it. And hopefully they'll take pity on it. So that got filled in on Wednesday. And then this week, the one thing that I not purposely made a change, but I watched less and less channels. I'm still a big computer person. I'm still a big film person, but I decided for a couple of weeks, maybe just for this week, that I will watch less and less of the filmy side. So there might be later on a little bit less about what people have done on that side, not because they're not my friends anymore, but because I didn't watch them. Everybody knows that my blog is what I've done this week, and I don't lie. So basically, I thought I needed some time to do something different, probably concentrate a little bit on something that I'm going to do for this channel myself, which is sad because I've always said one of the biggest things that I feel I want to do is collaborate. And collaboration is something that you can only do if the other person is willing to bring you on. So if I'm not in a chat room or in part of a chat group or anything like that, then of course months can go by and people forget you. And I've noticed my numbers dwindle. It's the last time I was doing a chat, other than, a watch along, which I really, really love on a Tuesday, is January. And we're now mid-March. So you can imagine other people have been coming on and doing that sort of thing. And that's fine. It's just that I have no outlet to talk about things I've watched or answer questions to stretch my knowledge. Bring into discussion films that are not the same every week, that come from people of a similar background. I find the best chat ones are the ones that are diverse, the ones that this person likes comedy, this person likes horror, this person likes, do you know what I mean? And you get a mix. And to me, I'm not part of one particular genre, but I am severely lacking probably in the horror more than anything. Just purely because that's what happened. I was huge on it in the 80s, diminished in the 90s, and then came to where I am now, which is going over my old films that I bought on VHS and updating them to 4Ks and doing it in a format that's steelbook. So, when people say, "Oh, have you seen this horror film from the 80s?" I'm pretty much on there going, "Oh yeah." Can't remember too much about it, but I remember that one, yeah. But when they start talking about the newer ones, and I've mentioned it, I'm very appreciative to my friend Rock God. By the way, hi Nige. That he mentioned things like the film Pearl and X and Ginger Snaps and all of these titles, and I've come away with a much more rounded approach to films. Problem is, if you don't chat to that person in those groups or speak outside of a broadcast, just like a telephone conversation or a chat, general chat, then I'm not learning anything. And I tend to find that the chat rooms talk about the same things over and over again. There's a familiar one that comes up, which is great, but it teaches you nothing. Those are questions like, who would win between Freddy Krueger and Candyman? You go, theoretical question, quite fun, great. Then, if you had to choose between these two films, which ones would you have? And then put things like Blade Runner and Star Wars, Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, American Werewolf for London and Ginger Snaps. Well, that's 6 films to discuss, 3 independent ones that you need an answer to, and 6 people that have got to come up with their own answers, and 30 people all wanting to ask a question. And the problem with it is if you see 5 of those and 3 of them are broadcast, that's an hour. And you alienated 2 because they didn't get theirs out, and the others are waiting for their one little liner question that would probably take 10 minutes, 5 minutes tops to answer. So yeah, I'm not saying that happens an awful lot, but it happens more often than you'd want. And I feel sorry a little bit for the people that are in the chat rooms, and I definitely feel sorry for the person that's the grandmaster, the broadcaster, because you've got to think very quickly on the ball and remember what questions have been asked and the types of questions that have been asked. And for a person that's also then got to come up with the answers as well, that's very difficult. Now, I haven't seen Pete for a long time, so of course I can only talk about Mike Z, Scott, my good friend Scott. And all I can say in regards to Scott is Scott's got the better balance. But you can see it creep in. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter how good you are, it creeps in. Sorry, I had to have a drink there. So yeah, that's been my week. This might be a shorter one because I've watched less. That's all I was going to say. So we're going to get the news out the way. Let's start the ball rolling. And again, I haven't really been paying too much attention to the news, but I've got what I've got written down. So here we are with the war. And it says supporters of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who was found dead last month in a prison, has been urged. They have been urged to stage a protest at Russian polling stations on the last day of voting in the election. Meanwhile, Ukraine has launched a new wave of drone attacks. Yes, I do remember this now. So all this week is the Russian elections for re-election of Putin or, one of the other candidates. And yes, I was skimming through the channels on Friday, I remember, on the news, trying to stay awake. And it was saying that Putin was going to get a landslide victory, which depressed me slightly, because obviously we know about this war and Putin and his legislations and all that sort of stuff, and it would be really grateful if he lost. Do you know what I mean? That would be one light that would shine on how this war might end. But it also, when I think back to that, I also mentioned, I think a couple of months, that there was a big hoo-ha about re-elections that were going on in Ukraine. I think that was to do with Zelensky saying that he thought that they should go on, but the people of Ukraine said that you shouldn't be able to have an election during war. And in fact, I think it's written in charter that you can't. But of course, we're not all one world, and certain countries have different views. So there was a Ukraine election and there was a Russian election, and therefore we've got an election going on during a war, which I don't think should happen, in my own opinion. That should hold back until the war's finished and then re-elect. So that's my opinion, and you don't usually get too many of those. And then we turn to the UK news. 2 or 3 stories here, but only because they were in my face a little bit this week, if you see what I mean. It started off with the outrage of a picture that the Princess of Wales, Kate, her name is, she produced a family photograph, one of these public photographs that the royals generally hand out every now and again. And it's the first photograph of her and her children since she had a major operation a couple of months ago. And it was doctored, photoshopped. And an outrage. Certain papers wouldn't even publish it. To me, I've got, who cares? An apology came out from the royals. It started a big hoo-ha, and I'm going, get a life. There's far too much going on in the world for me to worry about doctoring of photographs. And then, of course, the royals were back in the news later on at the end of this week, because William and Harry were at what they call the Diana Awards, an award that Princess Diana either set up or it was set up in memory of her. And the 2 lads, the boys, won't talk to each other in the same room virtually. So William gave his presentation and Harry gave his presentation. They're in 2 different countries. Can't even be in the same country together to do this to one of their mother, which is very sad, I think. The media made a big attention to it. I tried to think to myself, look, I don't have the best of conversations with my sister. And it being in different countries is a problem. And when you are as high up as a royal, even worse, especially when we know that there is a problem going on with security as well for Harry, because he's no longer a royal or does royal duties. So who pays for it? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the background, but yeah, it's still all a big mess. And it can't do the image very well. But it took it all away from our king, who I haven't heard too much about, on how his treatment is going for cancer. My prayers are with him. Nobody wants to wish unwell on anybody. I don't think, really, even your worst enemy. After a while, you soften up around that. But yeah, get well soon. And the last story was about the big fiasco with Sainsbury's and Tesco, two of our biggest supermarket chains, that had issues yesterday. It caused our Sainsbury's actually to close. Now, I tried to get to the thick of what the problem was, and I only got to the bottom of it this morning when it was said to me that the reason that most of the stores stayed open, but it caused a big problem, was that contractless payment was down. So there was lots of people that had done all their shopping, got to the tills only to find out it was cash only. And they had to then leave all of their shopping and go out the store, which meant that all these people had to put all the food back on the shelves. I don't know how long it lasted for, but apparently late afternoon it was back to normal. I didn't go Sainsbury's or Tesco shopping yesterday, so I missed it all. It was an article that came up in the car radio when I was getting my mother's supper. So I looked at it this morning and sort of laughed a little bit and went, wow, isn't it amazing what things are going on in your life when you're not really paying attention? That's what came to mind. Their disclaimer is it was resolved as quickly as possible. It was beyond their control, but tried to assure customers that their personal information is safe. And that makes me think they were hacked. And also makes me think, what personal information? I've never filled in a form. I've used my credit card. What do you store of your credit card payments? Because the one thing I know about HMV, and although it infuriates me an awful lot, they only keep the payment details of the long number, the date, and the PIN, the 3 digits that prove that it's the owner's, and not the customer's name. Well, surely Sainsbury's is like that. So if they did nick anything, it'd be a lot of long codes. But there you go. That's the news. And we move away from that and we'll start bringing up some details of shout-outs, which is that, for me, it's the delightful bit after the news, So hopefully I've missed no one. I have to apologise for last week. It was a bit, excuse my French, but it was a shit fest. I hated what I brought out. But I said that I'd bring out a blog every Sunday without fail. There was going to be no failure on this. If I couldn't get this to work, I'd got a laptop here, I'd do it on that. I don't care. I'll do it on the phone. There would be something, even if it's just a blog to follow. Everything's okay. And if it came out on the Monday, at least the sticker was there that said that there was going to be a blog. But anyway, I haven't got any of those safeguards, which I'll have to think about, to be quite honest. And I had to do it twice. And I'm sure there's some comments in there, and I'm sure they're going to be lovely. But I'll just explain what happened. So I open up my software as I always do, and I get myself prepared with screen layouts. Yeah, and I always do a recording test. Right? And I noticed when I did my recording that the sound was a bit down. And I remembered I hadn't opened my Logitech blue microphone software, which adds a bit of boom, adds a bit of gain control, makes the signal and sound a little bit better, I find. Not by much, but it's there. And I didn't realise it was doing an update. And some updates can take ages. But what it did do was knock the driver off. And that meant that the microphone lights were still blinking. The green bar on my OBS software was bouncing up and down to show that a signal was being recorded. But it couldn't record anything because the driver wasn't there. So it was acting sort of like a dummy microphone where it would work like a loudspeaker, but recording nothing. So, of course, I went through 2 hours, 40 minutes. I checked the recording time. And I didn't even check the recording. I did the screenshot, the picture, and all of that sort of stuff. Uploaded it, and it took an hour for it to upload. And then, of course, it starts doing a render to HD. But people sometimes want to watch the blog a little bit earlier and watch the standard definition. And there was a couple of messages saying, no sound, no sound. And I was going, no sound? What are that about? So I went back and found there was no sound. Yeah. Now, the other thing that I had to do that afternoon was get my mother a new TV. Now, the reason for that was the sound had totally gone, and I tried to find some speakers that would suit, and they didn't. And I said to my mother, let me just go out and buy a sound bar. Your telly's okay. Let me get a sound bar, because the telly is a very small telly. It's like a 32-inch. That's what they consider now small. That used to be bloody large when I was watching films back in the day. I had a 32-inch Philips CRT TV, and you knew it. Weighed a ton. But I digress. The screens are so thin now and wide that the speakers are backward firing, and they are speakers, and they're small. They're, we're talking no greater than, I don't know, 10, 15 watts. But these are totally gone. And the way that they now, in new technology TVs, is they use the front panel as an amplifier. So the sound shoots forward through the perspex of the panel to amplify the sound. But the one thing I can't do for my mother is take her ears off of her head, take them into a shop and say, Mum, can you hear that? So she has to come with me. So that took an hour and 20 minutes. Went into a Curry's, said, listen to that telly, listen to that telly, listen to that telly. Any of those can you hear? She picked one out that she loved. She said, the picture's lovely on that. The guy came along, turned the volume up. Oh, I can hear that. That's great. And I went on to Amazon, and there was a £2 difference between the Amazon price and the Curry's shop. So I negotiated with the guy, and I said, what are you going to throw in? We've got cash. And he said, knock a £5 off. And I thought to myself, that knocks it lower than Amazon. So I said, that's a good start. I said, how about throwing in a cable or an all-in-one remote control? And he showed us the cable he had in mind, and the remote control he had in mind. They were cheap, nasty. But the cable was the best of the two. So I bought the cable, got the cable. So we got the telly, a cable, and £5 off. And it's more than what Amazon would have done, and would have had to have waited a day. So then when I got back, I assembled it. Took 15 minutes. Switched it on, and went through its painful sign into this, sign into that, which I haven't got an account for my mother. So I went skip through this process. Got the Sky to work with it. Put the volume up to what I said, Mum, what's the level that you can hear? And I'm happy to report that she can hear the telly well at volume level 55. And she had it at 100 on the old telly for 3 years, which is why the speakers blew. Of course, she has to fiddle about with the volume for different shows. So she could be watching Midsummer Murders recorded 15 years ago, and the sound will be a bit muffled and low. She'll watch a sporting programme, and she'll need to put that down because all you can hear is the crowd noise and everything else. But she doesn't go above 60, which is good after a week. And she's so happy because she can now watch her Coronation Street and her Emmerdale and hear the voices. I said, that's not a good thing, Mum. That's something that I'd seriously address if it was me. But I'm not a big soapy. I have to watch them with my mum because I'm with her talking about my day most of the time, or bringing in a meal or a cup of tea and they're on. Do you know what I mean? So thanks for anybody that's got suggestions, but just to give you an answer, I did mention it, I think, in my first broadcast, but it might not have been in my second, and this is where it gets difficult. Sound bars were not an option. I'm intelligent enough to know that wouldn't it be great if I could just get a sound bar and put it in and connect it up? I mean, that I'm a techie. Of course I thought of it. So I'm not going to think badly if you gave that as a suggestion. It's just that know for once that this person is in his 50s, has been around tech all his life, has got sound amps, etc., etc. And so, yes, of course I would have thought about speakers. External. So, and I watch Tech Moan, don't I? So, anyway, we'll get to the shout-outs, and they are, in no particular order, Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Steve's Gaming, Wee Bob Art, Jambon, David's Retro Games Played Badly, Seb's Place, Down the Rabbit Hole, Martroid, Danny Jukes, Denny, and Robert's Retro Gaming. And hopefully I've not missed anybody there. I've also done a video, a film capsule review and unboxing, and haven't taken the names from there. So I might look at that shortly, and I'll read out the names there after I've done the comments, because I don't want to lose the notes that I've got in front of me here, because that's the next thing we're going to do, is going to read out what your thoughts were this week to my last broadcast. And I'm not looking forward to this because it was such a shit fest. So let's have a look. So Robert, Retro Gaming, great bloke. You know, I'm a big fan of his. He's got his own channel. Please go and sub to that. Robert's Retro Gaming. Thanks for re-recording, Del. I don't know if I could have had the heart. Sorry to hear about the ongoing challenges at work. That's hugely frustrating. I hope your mum is feeling better and that you get the TV thing sorted out. Just get one that's loud. Smiley face. Let us what's that say? Fervently. Let us fervently hope that the war in Ukraine does not escalate. What a mess. And I'm sorry I obliterated that word, Robert. Like I say, some people's vocabs are much more than mine. In fact, half the world, in fact, 3/4 of the world, I hit that dunce bracket myself. As usual, I enjoy listening to your interesting reminiscences. On the subject of handheld gaming systems, I've had quite a few of them over the years, and still have a number. I quite like the PS Vita, and it was a bit too small for my fairly large hands. Recently, I caved in to an impulse and bought both an R36S and an RGB30 from AliExpress. They both are pretty decent, but the one I'm playing on the most is the RGB30. I believe you had recommended that one on Discord, as did Mamemeister. Still, a bit small for me. I'd like to try someone's Steam Deck to see how it feels. Wow, such a lot there to sort of like just talk about for a moment. Yeah, it was actually Mamemeister that mentioned the RGB30. And I actually bought one of those for a friend for Christmas. They're really, really cheap, but they're not supposed to be a handheld like a DS or a Vita or anything. Their unique selling feature is that they have a square screen. Yes, they're not wide. So if you're of the sort of person that delves into retro gaming and recognise the old way of playing things, which would have been on your square TV, then basically they're ideal. But then if you want to watch a wide, newer type game, you'll get a border at the top and the bottom. Go figure. That's exactly what we had with the films and living with Philips widescreen TVs. Where if you wanted to keep the same ratio, because things were back in those days just stretched to fit, everybody looked like they had fat asses and big heads. Much better now, anamorphic. But yeah, so the RGB 30 I'm a big fan of. I gave that to my friend and he said it's lovely. So I can only imagine that it is. But you mentioned the Vita being too small in your hands. Yeah, the Vita was a smaller device, but it was larger than a DS and larger than a 3DS. Much, larger than a Game Boy. But not as big as a Switch or a Wii U. Do you know what I mean? So I understand it. The PSP I thought was bigger than the Vita. I'd have to look. I've got them both in my drawer behind me, but can't be asked to go look after I've just turned around before just to show you a plug. But when it comes to the Steam Deck, so I've been lucky in the fact that my friend Mamemeister came down to see me and he brought his Steam Deck with him. And I managed to have a go on one. And it's gorgeous. Oh my God, it just feels so lovely in your hands. Just I'm not a portable player. So I can't imagine me turning this PC off, sitting in front of the telly watching a film and having a portable in my hand, playing a game casually. I tend to find that the games I play on the PC as well are a bit more in depth. But they play on the Steam, don't get me wrong. And they're a bit costly. But I tell you what, Robert, I think it would do you well. You're very similar to Mamemeister, and he loves his, plays on it a lot. I mentioned to him on the phone actually a couple of weeks ago that sometimes I think he doesn't go over his old ground quite enough. And he said, what do you mean by that, Del? And I said, well, you mentioned about your Steam Deck, but you've also mentioned on your channel a number of times that you bought these things and never go back to them. And I think it'd be really good for you to go back and say 3 months with the Steam Deck or 6 months with the Steam Deck. Has that excitement, that buzz gone out of it? Do you use it as much or less than when you first bought it, etc., etc.? People love those things. They want to know whether the value for money is there. I think he took it in, but I haven't seen anything of that sort of content come out. Do you see what I mean? But the question that was referred to me was my favourite handheld, if I remember rightly, which is why I brought out the Pandora, but finalised with a standard device that wasn't a Kickstarter of any sort, which I thought was the PSP. It was the happy medium towards power, size, and features that I had quite a lot of input with because I bought the games on disc. They fitted into a UHD disc underneath. And now they're to a penny and you can hack them and play them on memory sticks. But I said last week what the downside of all of the Sony products was, and that was its proprietary memory system, which I believe there's a workaround now for both devices. You don't have to use Sony's memory sticks, which cost as much as the console, because you can buy adapters. So, hey, happy days for anybody that's looking for a handheld at the moment. I totally recommend picking up a very cheap PSP or a Vita. They still have their worth. They're still lovely screens. Oh my God. The picture quality on those just outstanding. And of course, through the development life, they changed, I think just at the back end to OLED, I think, for the Vita. LED for the PSP or LCD think they're LEDs. Yeah, LED panels. So yeah, brilliant. And thank you so much, Robert, for your question. Well, your insight, should I say, really. And the happy thoughts. Thank you so much. And we move now to, oh my God, Word and Peace Denny, which you know what that means. That means take a slip of drink. My nose is already blocking up. And I was taking that drink. So let's get through what Denny has got to say. And it's always insightful, so I love it. So let's have a look. Hiya, mate. What a ball ache for you last week when that updating driver caused you your sound issues. Fair play to you, Dell. Dedication is a rare commodity these days, and I'd like to say thank you for persevering and going for a second take. I could see you were extremely tired. My God, was I? Yeah. I hope you've had a little time to yourself this week and rested. That's pretty much why I said what I said at the beginning. And chilled out playing a few games or watching a few films. Hope your mother is feeling a little bit better. Well, you can tell straight away, Denny, I was doing all of that. So thank you so much. Like yourself, I had a really bad week. What with my mother being extremely poorly with a severe chest infection, but also work which has dropped my mood, giving us a new roster with virtually no home life balance. Good news is, though, I think my mom has turned the corner and started the long journey getting better. Doctor said it can take a few weeks for all the symptoms to go. Yeah, and that's pretty much where I'm at with my mum, only she won't go to the doctors, and so she won't be taking tablets, and so therefore it takes a bloody sight longer. And I think that's why there's really very little change when I talk about my blog at the moment. Trying to get her out of that. We'll see what I can do this year. Your mum's TV. I think Steve's idea of a soundbar is a great idea. It looks very much like that's what didn't get across in my second blog, which would have been in my first, which was sound bars and speakers were not an option. That was the directive from my mother, which was a pain in the arse. Because I thought of other things like bringing in my 55-inch plasma and having it wall mounted, which would have been fantastic for picture. The speakers are really, really thin but big at the front. They're booming. Mamemeister's seen the TV. He'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about. But it's one that could be wall mounted. But of course, that would mean taking down pictures and mirrors in the living room, which we can't do, according to my mum. So, of course, can't do that either because the telly's too big to fit in the hole that her 32-inch TV comes out of, because the biggest screen you can have in there is a 36-inch screen, and they don't make those anymore. So if you go from 32, the next one up is 40. And that is 1.5 inches too wide for it to fit in the hole, because we measured it. It was 38.5 inches from the wall to the edge of the gap, and you need 40. What you have to remember here is they measure 40 diagonally, but it was the top that I measured, and we've got a gap of 38.5, and with the bezel it just wouldn't work. So we move on and say, now then, the topic that Jambon brought up about collecting. I have said to myself at times, why buy something if you don't plan to play it or don't like the film? As you know, I collect many things, but I'm an avid collector of Empire Pictures and Full Moon releases, past and present. Some of the films are absolutely awful, but the collector in me, like yourself, has to fill the gap. Yes, and not to put a too fine a point on it, I was privy to looking at something that my friend had done, and I urge him to get that out. He's doing a greater topic than what I've just talked about. It's much more wider than that. But part of it was, why do you buy films that you're never going to watch? just to fill in the gaps of your collection. And it's what a collector does. It's just a sad thing about it. So we move forward. As for storing my film collection, I buy really useful storage boxes, the long thin ones that hold 59 Blu-ray films, each to store, easy to store as well, and not so bulky as the big square ones. They stack easily on top of each other, taking less room. Yes, the reason I got the foldable crates was just for price, really, and it was supposed to be temporary, but temporary has turned to permanent. And then those boxes that you're talking about, the Perspex boxes with the lids that stack, too big. So under my bed is filled with other stuff that I can't put anywhere else. Take it like this. In the attic, it's got no heat control. So there's no hot, no cold. And so in the winter, it's freezing because it's above the lagging. And in the hot, it swelters up there. So things like trading cards that used to be in folders, I've got no shelf, so they go under the bed. You know what I mean? They stay in room temperature. No sunlight to ultraviolet light to ruin them. And there are a number of other things like that. So, of course, the long box idea doesn't work. And then the long box idea wouldn't work in a room that's 22 foot long by about 9 foot wide. Because you rely on things on the left and the right-hand side. And you can't really stack things up. Which is why you've got that awful mess behind me, which will change as soon as I can get some shelves or some cabinets. I want to go to IKEA, to be quite honest, and get some, what do they call them? DeWolf shelving. Been looking at people's collections and looking at what people have been saying about them. So I need to do that. Found a place for posters on eBay, but the picture is slightly bigger than A3, so now it's hunting down those plastic holders. That's the problem. I was thinking about that the other day, and I think they do clip holders, don't they? Where they're slightly bigger than A3, where you can the poster will fit in. It'll probably have a gap around the plastic sleeve because it's bigger than A3, but they clip into the folder that's the right size, like an artist's or a model's portfolio folder. So look for the word portfolio folder, that or artwork folder. That might bring something back. I don't know whether you mentioned it or not, but I bought the 12-part black and white BBC adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo new for 10 quid on DVD. Had some good write-ups, so look forward to watching that. Thanks for answering my question last week. The original Count of Monte Cristo was my favourite too. So glad that we on the same page. Didn't know about the 10-part one. Have to give me your capsule review, my friend. So that'd be interesting. My question for this week is something you mentioned last week about extended versions of films. Do you prefer extended versions over the theatrical versions? And name some that were better as extended and some you thought worked better as the theatrical. Cheers, mate. Pass on the best. Now, that is a question. See, that's not a question that's raised at the chats. Do you see what I mean? These are the ones where I go, wow, you can actually do a topic on this. Difficult. So I'm in two minds because I love extended, but I like extended when I'm at home. And I like theatrical because I'm seeing the version that is the best version at the time that they're bringing something out. I don't like fiddling about with something because you want to make money out of it. Or you revisit it on an anniversary and your mind is of it in a different place than when you first filmed it. So what do I think are extended cuts that I think work? Lord of the Rings. I think there's one of those Lord of the Rings that is too long. But overall, the extended versions of Lord of the Rings work as an extension. Dances with Wolves. Yes, a film that, if I remember rightly, was released and then re-released in the cinema as an extended and then brought out on VHS as two separate editions, and the extended was in a box. I remember it was a big box, came with a book and things, and I loved that box. It was gorgeous. And when it comes to the film, it added quite a lot of dialogue, quite a lot of Indian life, tribal life, and I think that worked. The Abyss. So The Abyss is coming out for everybody just shortly. I remember buying the original Abyss on VHS in widescreen for my Philips 32-inch widescreen TV the year it came out and loved it. And then they brought out an extended one about a year later. It added 20 odd minutes, and oh my God, it was all at the end. And it showed a totally different end. And you saw, not to give spoilers away, you saw all these new effects. You see, well, what I'm trying to say is there is such a different end that it changes the tone of the whole of the film. That definitely works. Okay. A controversial one is Once Upon a Time in the... no, not a controversial one. Once Upon a Time in America is an easy one to bring in because that was butchered. And when they finally brought out the director's one, it added more about the gangsters. And I think that added an awful lot. I might be wrong. In other people's opinions, it probably added far too much time to a film that was already pretty lengthy. Aliens is another one that I bought on Laserdisc, like The Abyss. And it came in an extended cut, and it was, if I remember rightly, like 22 minutes. And it added a backstory to Newt and the young girl, the little girl called Newt, and a number of extras all the way through the film. It's really good to watch that because I'd watched the theatrical version so much that when I was watching the extended one, I went, oh, new scene, new scene, new scene. And on Laserdiscs, it's even easier because it would put up a little picture dot to show you that this is an extended scene if you switched it on your remote. So that worked. Aliens definitely works as a longer cut. And Daredevil. Not many people talk about too much about the Marvel universe before Iron Man. But there was one. There was one. We had Blade and Punisher. And let me think. Blade, Punisher, Elektra, Daredevil. Yeah. So Daredevil came out in an abridged format and then came out with an extra, I think it was 11-minute version. And my God, does that ad take it like this. It got panned, and then when people watched the extended one, they went, that's quite a good film. So you can tell when something really works. Ones that I think are too long, yes. And I'm gonna be controversial here and mention The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Because Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of the quintessential westerns that I really, really love. And I watched the original theatrical version so many times in a loop. I mean, I must have worn the tape out. But they did a restoration and they added scenes in which people love. And don't get me wrong, these extra scenes are great. But it's all about the Civil War. Very, very little character extra in it. It's all about what was going on the Civil War while our heroes were going across the country doing what they were doing. And from my point of view, I much prefer the theatrical version than the extended version. It drags. The Civil War stuff is just superfluous. So I can see why they cut it out, to be quite honest. Dumb and Dumber is a strange one because Dumb and Dumber is a good comedy, but borders on the line of bad taste. But when they put the unrated one, you can see why they put a muzzle on. You know what I mean? Because if you ever watch the unrated version of Dumb and Dumber, it borders on the line of serious line crossing of what is tasteful and what is not tasteful. Yeah. So, in many ways, I wish they hadn't brought that one out. It's good that it's out there, but yeah, you have a different view on it when you watch that version. And Apocalypse Now is just a mess. So Apocalypse Now has got what? How many versions now? 4? They've probably done a 5th one by the time I finish this blog. It's one of those ones that keeps going back and being jigged about. There's a red version. There's a director's version, a theatrical version, an extended director's red version, Redux version. Oh, just does my head in. I tend to find that I go towards the more theatrical version or a slight cut extra into the theatrical version, rather than the extended longer versions. I'm glad I have them. I've watched them and I'm glad I've seen them. But give me the theatrical one every day, to be quite honest. And then I'm in two minds about this one. And that is Blade Runner. Blade Runner has been talked about, discussed, and has got quite a few different cuts out there. And some people are always asking the question, yes, but which is the one to watch? And it really is down to your own personal preference here, because the emphasis is at the end, and where the theoretical question is being asked. So what you have to understand here is, do you want it to be ambiguous? Do you want a specific answer? Which? And all the layers in between. So I'm in two minds, because I'm glad they're out there. I'm glad I've seen them. I wouldn't part with them. If they did another cut, I'd buy it. It's just the theatrical one, I suppose, is the one that I remember the most. It's the one where my mind goes back to. But the final cut isn't bad either. You know, I'm not gonna wrap it up in cotton wool like it was something that you can't discuss, in quotes. But I put it in the outer, does it work, doesn't it work, bracket of the ones where I've just mentioned do work longer and don't work longer. Blade Runner just fits in that outside of the, left field of all of that. So thank you so much for that. I hope that's a good enough answer for you, Denny. And we're moving now to another friend of the channel. Thank you so much. This one's from Ian the Hill Ramblings, and I'm going to have another drink. He's written some long stuff as well. So let's read this out. Thank you for your blog. To have to redo it all again would have just drained away my energy. You did well to do this. That takes a lot of determination. It sounds like it typified what a shit week it has been. Hoping you and your mother have had a better week and that people at your work can learn to be kinder with each other. Yeah. The weird thing about it is that nothing changed in regards to calls to me. How am I okay? And in some ways, I'm glad. I think I got over the talking about it in the blog, because I'd mentioned it twice. That might be one of the reasons. But I still miss those chats. Those breakups where you were meaning to do something, and out of the blue, a phone call or a conversation comes along, and you can then have a really nice chat. But I always come away from those chats going, why don't those happen more often? And then months go by before they do happen again. So yeah, sometimes I could be on a high, but then I drop quite rapidly again. It's weird to try to explain it, but this is a warts and all blog, so I'll try my best. Ian continues, it was good to see you and Ryan together on that stream. I was pleased for you both because I think it went well, and I was so pleased to see you do your film reviews. You showed a love of Excalibur whilst giving very informative review. It's what I enjoy. Yeah, it was a shame about the watch along, but unfortunately we had a member that had pre-booked something else which we were aware of, and I felt bad that person was not in it, and we were going to move forward. And then it just happened to be that another person was feeling ill that day. And so there was no way in this wide world that I was going to go to Ryan and say, we'll continue to do this. Because you've got two important family members out. It's bad when one's not there. It's atrocious if two. So I didn't put my foot down. I just said to Ryan it would be disingenuous to do that. They're our friends. I'm sure they would love to be able to do this, and we've got the luxury of time to do this. It doesn't have to be done. You know, we can do something else. And we had a chat, and we talked about Dirty Harry, and we talked about other films, and we talked about another subject, which was about slipcovers. I urge you to go and watch it, because if you're ever into films and you are the type of person that collects steelbooks or slipcovers and they're all important to you, there's some very big questions I asked in there for which we got quite a few answers from people in the audience, you know, the people that were typing, plus Ryan's own insight and my own insight. So yeah, that's worth it just for that. You continue, this week I've continued a more relaxed approach to creating videos. However, I still am producing quite a bit of content. I'm happy with that, and I'm so glad that you are. Get that balance in for yourself. Your mention of Star Trek the Motion Picture brought back some treasured memories. I went to see it in Leeds at the cinema when it was released. We had to queue and managed to get in to a full house. The atmosphere was amazing. The anticipation, wow. There were gasps and applause when we saw the Enterprise. It looked so beautiful. There were murmurs too when our favourite crew members appeared on the screen, particularly Kirk and Scotty with his moustache. You could hear the comments about how older they looked. It was a big deal. I don't think we could quite believe that this cancelled sci-fi series had made it onto the big screen. None of us thought it was slow or too long. Unlike the critics, we loved it. We were the fans. Yeah, couldn't say that more better. And I think my friend down the rabbit hole, Kevin, would be appreciative of that. It is one of those films that if it's on TV, I'll watch it. If I feel like I've got nothing to do or I just want to listen to something, I'll put it on and get on with something else, and I can hear all the dialogue and I know exactly where they are in the film when I'm listening. They did look older, but I didn't think Shatner looked that old. I thought he looks just right. My God, what a handsome bastard you really are, you git. I think Scotty aged the worst. Saying that, it was a great film, and I think what people forget is what a spectacle that film really was. It came from a time where Paramount obviously embraced this film, because I remember going into the cinema and the curtains opened and there was a Starfield there, and it played one whole suite of music before the film even started. It was Ilea's theme. I can remember it now. It's about a 4 or 5 minute track. And all you're seeing is a star field, and everybody's there going, this is a nice piece of music. But when does the film start? You know, it's a bit unusual, but this is the time where it's a spectacle, and this is where if you went to the theatre, the orchestra would be warming up and they'd play some music before the actors come on. It was that sort of thing. And then suddenly you got the drums and the strings all come in, and the words Star Trek, the motion picture, came onto the screen, and all our heroes' names in huge letters on the screen. And it was just brilliant. And you got to remember, it was of an age where I was, 9, 10. My God. So yeah, happy memories. Thanks, Ian, for that comment. It's great to know that it invoked something in you as well. On your live stream with Ryan, I mentioned a film I love, which is Where Eagles Dare, which did star Richard Burton, a great actor who, in terms of his film career, never fulfilled his full potential. So my question is, this week, have you a favourite actor or actress who you feel never made enough films which their talent deserved? They can be alive or dead. Wow, that's such a big list. And I think it's worse the further you go back. If I remember rightly, was it Bette Midler? She did under 50 films. In fact, I think it was under 40, and got 2 Oscars, and a third was taken away from her that she well deserved to have. That's an immense tally. You think about it when you've got other actors that have done 100 plus. That's a concentrated effort. And yet we talk about Bette Midler like she made thousands of movies. No, she hardly any. But let's think for a moment. A person who I couldn't get enough of when I was watching all my Scorsese stuff was Joe Pesci. And I loved him in My Cousin Vinny, and he was brilliant in Casino and Goodfellas. Made me laugh in Home Alone. And yet, he's sort of semi-retired. He still comes out of retirement and does the odd thing, because he did the Irishman for Scorsese a couple of years back. But there's an actor that could do so much more. Gene Hackman did a lot of films, which is why he's not in my list. But he retired far too early. I'd love Gene Hackman to come back. What a guy. You can imagine his seniority, his age, what the type of gritty part he could do. Because he was never really a big action thing. He was in action films, but he was always that sergeant or that shouty person in the army, or he was always a reporter or person in court or whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway, so he's not in it, but Gene Wilder. Then again, this is sort of like a love letter from me, really. That I'd love Gene Wilder to do a lot more. I think when his wife died, it shook him so much that he decided to sort of semi-retire. He did do a couple of films, then did nothing and died. And you just think to yourself, what a sad waste of talent. Can't express how badly we miss people like Joe Pesci and Gene Wilder. But Gene Wilder, because there's nothing that we can do about it now. Joe Pesci is still alive. Unlike River Phoenix, another one taken way too early, a bit of a James Dean. Now, I'm not a James Dean fan, but many people will have James Dean on their lists because of how early his life was taken and how few films he did and what the quality of those films were. But to me, I was never a big fan of that rebel 50s look. But River Phoenix, yeah. So many of those films, those coming of age type films, and then him starting to come into other works, and then the sad demise. And when we think about Michael J. Fox, we think about he must have done tons. Again, under 50, I believe. But we can reel them off, can't we? The Back to the Futures, Frighteners, Secret to My Success. You know, the list goes on. Doc Hollywood. But I think we think of that because he did a lot of TV stuff. So his face was on TV a lot. And sadly now with his medical condition, not to be. I have now watched the latest documentary on Michael J. Fox. It's very moving. I urge people to watch that. It was mentioned to me, I think, last week or the week before, and I've got round to watching it now. Very moving. And the last one, or semi-last one, is Daniel Day-Lewis, who I think is such a perfectionist, picks and chooses his films, that basically there's just next to nothing of it. But when he does something, it stands out. No other reason other than that. But he has a presence. And I'd like to see more from him. You see what I mean? Noticeable mention here that I'm sure has come to people's minds is Marilyn Monroe. She did do over 50, I believe. Died far too young. She's in my favourite film, Some Like It Hot, which just goes to show what she could do. You know, she was that sort of person that has that presence that all she had to do was just turn around and smile at you, and you just thought, wow, she doesn't have to say a word. What a presence! It's Marilyn Monroe. What can you say? Oh, I suppose I could come out with tons more, but I'm going to end it there. I'm hoping that's a good list for you, Ian, and we'll move forward. Thank you so much. Salute to all of the ones above as well. If I haven't been using my salute too much today. Then we get to Steve's Gaming, which is unusual because it would normally be a different name, but that was the old name. It says, "Hi Del, my comment was wiped." Yeah, oh God. So is my channel now. Oh God, sick of YouTube. That saddens me. I did check your channel because I saw a video that you did this week and I couldn't remember the software name of the company that you did your retrospective on, and your channel is down, which saddens me. You started your channel several weeks after I started mine. You had more subs than I did. You had a much better approach than I ever could and brought the fun to your channel, and it's not there because YouTube's pissed you off. But it is each to their own. I can't do anything about it. If you're watching this, my urge to you is bring it back. Don't go away. I think there's too many people that miss what you do. And you always said that you did it because it was fun. Now, I know YouTube's a pain in the arse, but if it's fun, do it. You'll thank me for it afterwards. And if you do keep it down, I'll have to do my my salute to Steve a bit early, which is you bastard, like this, because you know how much I want your channel back. So you continue. So I'm dropping my comment with this account and seeing if it also is deleted, which it wasn't. Hi Del, sorry about your work problems. That person seems like a complete prick. Hope you get yourself sorted out. 2 questions for you. 1. The Steam Spring sale just kicked off. Are you going to treat yourself to anything? He knows me too well. Yes. Bound sure to. Haven't yet, because the thing I bought this week, which I'll probably show at the end, wasn't in the sale. Or it was, but only in a sale because it's the first day of release, where you always get a percentage off. But I'm bound sure to buy something in the sale. Always. I just can't stop myself. Easy one to answer there, therefore. Question 2. If you could have any job in the world, what would it be and why? Wow. Take care, mate, and love to your mum. Will this comment stick? ? We'll see. Happy news, it did. Job. I think I mentioned it, actually, yes. Back in the day, and I still feel this urge right now, I thought the best job in the world would be the film editor. A person who works on a big budget film, who works so closely with the director that he comes into your office where you've got all your technical equipment, sits down with you and cuts the film to the finished product. And you saw all the bits that were on the cutting room floor. The only person who can say that is the people on set, the cameraman, and crew, and the editor. And everybody else, you've got no idea. Was there a bit cut out of it? Was there a bit not cut out of it? Was there talk of this, that, and the other? Speculation. Editor knows. And you're also shaping it and getting an end result to something that the director goes, yeah, I authorise this. Thank you so much for your help, young man, is what I hope they'd say to me. Replace young man with bastard if you want. But yeah, film editor, definitely. Thank you, Steve. My salute to you. Please don't give up your channel. Please contact me if you can. Wee Bob Art. So what we got from my favourite artist, other than my artist that I really, 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 really love and is now dead, which everybody knows is. Sorry to hear the video didn't work out the first time. Hope this week's vlog goes better. Maybe you should set a wee time for 30-minute intervals to just take a wee 2-minute break and check the recording, which wouldn't have made a blind bit of difference to you in this particular state, wee Bob, because the voice levels were bobbing up and down. It was the driver that cut the microphone engine off. You only knew when you got to the end. What should have happened was I should have done what I do every week, by the way, is a small 2-minute recording before I hit the record button with a testing. So you do a testing, 1, 2, 3, make sure the lip sync's working. In this particular instance, I didn't. So, yeah, ain't going to make that mistake again. Anyway, hope your week is better, as always. And I know saying that doesn't make it better, but I hope it was. Question for next time. I started playing The Witcher 3 today. Oh, what a game. Played that a lot. Playing The Witcher 3 today. My first time playing any Witcher game. And so far, I'm enjoying it. Witcher 3 is so much different to Witcher 2 and 1. And I started off with Witcher 1. Brilliant game. Fond memories of that. But Witcher 3, yeah, they developed this engine and it looks gorgeous and set out this world. And it really is good. But so many people knock it because it really is just a roll block fight and then go from one place to another for a sort of open world type feel. I loved it. I don't care what they say. It all depends on what people's attitudes are. I think it's a great game. Loved it. Anyway, I hope your week is better. And I know saying that won't make it happen. Question for next time. I started playing Witcher 3 today. My first time playing on the Witcher games, and so far I'm enjoying it. Can you give me 3 games that were long and in depth that you loved and probably would go back to playing today? 1 game from the 8-bit era. Oh. 1 game from the 1632-bit era. And then something modern. I'll tell you what, I'm going to have the hardest part with the 1632-bit era. The era where CD was king. And consoles were king. 1 game from the 8-bit era. Elite. Easy. If it isn't Elite, it'll be an Ultima game. I played Ultima on the Commodore 64. Text adventures were also quite long, only because I was crap at them. But yeah, Elite or Ultima, big thumbs up to those, and I would easily go back to those. 16 or 32-bit. You see, you can't really count a DX50, a PC DX50 in these terms, 16, 32-bit, and so forth. Because if you could, there were so many role-playing games and strategy games. But thinking of it for a moment, there were some 16-bit, 32-bit strategy games. What was that one? Supremacy. Yeah. The Amiga version of Supremacy, I think it was. I'd play that again. Yeah. A harder one, though. And then the modern era. Well, that's easy. I can't say enough how massively multi-online role-playing games influenced me for how much time I was playing in a game. And Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2 were my 2 go-to games. And if I felt differently about them, you know, if I could get that enthusiasm to go back, I'd be in there like a shot. But the trouble is, quite a lot of time has passed by now since I loaded those accounts, that I'd rather they stopped Guild Wars 2 and developed a Guild Wars 3 where I started from scratch. It's horrible to say that because I was so upset that when Guild Wars 2 came out, that the Guild Wars servers went off. They brought them back online, by the way, through fan badgering. So for the later part, Guild Wars would definitely be there. But of course, anything that I've not completed, anything that's a long game, that is not pre-rendered or on a rail, you know, like you're on a train track that you can't deviate from, I would play now. I've heard such great things about Red Dead Redemption, which I've got down there in a steelbook, and I've never loaded it up yet. I've just, believe it or not, installed Skyrim. And I've had that from day one as a dragon statue and never loaded it. So many. There are so many titles there, wee Bob, but it all depends on what your thoughts and feelings are. Me, the games that I played the most were the RTS games, like Total Annihilation, Command and Conquer, Red Alert, role-playing games, you know, like the Ultima series. I've just mentioned Morrowind, Skyrim, and anything open world. And right now it's survivor games, like Valheim, Enshrouded, should I say. I think there's one called Snakes Above. That's an obscure one. But yeah, survivor games. So I hope I've given quite a few titles there to give you some interest. The hardest one is the 16-bit. If I think really hard, I'm sure people are just screaming at the screen. How can you not remember this about the Amiga, this long game here, or this game there, or whatever? But my head is clouded with whenever I think of Amiga as being with cinemaware games like Defender of the Crown, It Came from the Desert, Rocket Ranger, and they were short, and I can play them now, and I do on occasion, but they weren't long games, not like Guild Wars, not like Elite is. Do you see what I mean? So I blocked them out, and then I can't think then of what the long ones were. So I'm going to move on and just say to you, thank you so much, Rebobart. You know I'll be watching your channel. I've got probably some questions for you about digital art. I'm still looking forward to a Spider-Man one from you in the style of John Romita Sr., who is only your second in reputation. How's that for a bigging up of your skills? Then we got Jambon. Hi, Del, my friend Jambon. So good to see you here, matey. Hi, Del. Thanks for another great vlog. You're a real troop of recording that twice. I salute your... Oh, God, everybody's using such huge words. Indefatigability. Right, got it. Jesus. We'll be interested to hear what you think of Graveyard Keeper. I've had that in my backlog for a while after the YouTuber Pushing Up Roses covered it on one of her videos. Never heard of her, so I'll have to look that up. Also enjoyed your summary of the Brit Awards. All the best, old Bean, and take care. Graveyard Keeper. I'd heard so much about it because people ridicule the name. You know, who, what? So you get home at night and you think, I know what I'd like to be. I'm going to put myself in a game and I'm going to be the person who looks after the graveyard. Doesn't come to mind one bit. But I tell you what, it fills me with more joy than a game like Stardew Valley would be. Why don't you become this little character that sets out to become a farmer that then learns about all these other characters, that then learns how to do things like brewing and building and learning about how stone works and burning and all this sort of stuff, right? And you think to yourself, and the reason that game is so good is because it's so in depth in what it does. What you have to think about now is, what is Graveyard Keeper? And I tell you now, it's Stardew Valley with humour. and I don't want to alienate Stardew Valley users because it's an immense game, an absolute corker of one. Graveyard Keeper goes that a bit macabre. You know, you've got to tend to your grave, learn about woodworking, learn about stone keeping, learn about the growing things, learn about faith, how to get faith, how to get science, because eventually, and this is the funny side of things, towards the end of the game, you bring the dead back to life as zombies and you ask them to do your jobs for you that you couldn't do before, which is things like making planks and making nails and growing crops. So I've now got a zombie army that is getting coal and brick and marble for me and cutting down trees while I go off and finish off the story. It's a great game in a graphical engine no more complex than what Zelda would have been, which means that it'll run on anything, to be quite honest. And that's not to distract from the graphical finesse of the game, because it is actually quite good. There's rain effects, fog effects, sun, night, great lighting, it's gorgeous. So Graveyard Keeper, a definite thumbs up from me on that game. And thank you so much, Jambon. And we move to David's retro gameplay badly. Try and get through these now. We've been going for quite some time. Sorry to hear you've had a bad week, mate. I hope things go better for you over the next week. I've paid hundreds of pounds on games that are terrible. Yeah, that's that in respect to collecting. Interesting fact that you may not know, the reason Darkman is so expensive on the Hit Squad label is it won't load. When they recorded the tape, they accidentally recorded side 2 on both sides, so it won't load. Most copies got returned or destroyed. Gotta have it for the full set, though. Exactly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's a release. It's knackered. But you got to have it because it was actually an official release with an actual official release number on the tape. You mentioned, I don't think Spider-Man spinning webs out of his bum will take off. No, nor do I. The Star Trek footage sounds awesome. Would love to see it. You just want to see me cock up. This is where I threatened the world last week to show me playing Captain Kirk in the Star Trek adventure. It might happen. You don't know. I've got it on VHS tape. I might threaten to do that one day. Shame about the sound issue. You have a lot more patience than me. I would have lost my temper and given up. Trouble is, this is a blog, and I set out a standard. And in that standard, I said, no matter what happens, I'll bring out a blog. If I knew that there was something that I couldn't do on a Sunday, I'll record it on the Saturday and schedule it to come out Sunday. All of that sort of stuff is in my mind. So when something happens on the day that stops that from happening, I've got to record it on the day. It's still got to get it out. And of course, what was happening was the light was going. That just shows how bad it was. It was like 5 o'clock, and it even went into Mamemeister's video stream. So I couldn't be there at the beginning of that. I missed the first 45 minutes. So there I was till about 7:45. Finished his stream, ending at 9 o'clock. And then it's time for bed and work the next day. And that's my whole day gone. Doing bugger all. Other than I got my mum's telly up and running. So, yeah. Fair play for starting again. Take care, mate. And please, guys, most of these people have got a channel. David's Retro Games Play Badly has got a great channel. You want to look at that. It's definitely a passion of his. His collecting. I mean, when you do see the pictures, other than the corner that he records his videos in, it's an immense collection. And to think that some of those are 100% complete, my God. Still got some way to go though, thank God. So I'm happy about that. Then we've got Seb's Place. Yay, Seb's Place. Del, I've done that. Recorded whole segments and been really happy with it, only for the audio to suck. It didn't suck. There was none there. I've not done 2 hours though, so hats off to you for redoing it. As for having a shit week, just remember spring is around the corner. The sun will start shining, which always makes me anyway much more positive about things. Take care. And I'll try to keep that in my head, Seb. It is difficult at the moment. I've said that every day is a reset day for me, and I keep that all the time in my head. So thank you for all the positiveness. Definitely shone through with your comments to me. Then we get into the last two. Down the rabbit hole, my friend Kev. Rough to hear things aren't too well with you and your mum. Del, keep your chin up. Yeah, all of them. I liked what you said about Shatner in Star Trek the Motion Picture. He did seem at his best in that film, and less of the youthful crazy guy we saw in the original series. I'll tell you what stands out about him. I remember he had these sideburns that went down to a sort of like a point. It's where sideburns weren't a fashion, but it's just that his hair was so immaculately done, you know, whether it was a wig then or not. We all think it was. And he had these sort of like half moon sideburns that just looked so sharp. And then of course his face looked that much more distinguished. But you sort of like could see that he could still be a captain. Do you know what I mean? He looked not fat, not thin. He just looked just how I would love myself to have been in my 40s. Take it like that. If I was looking like that in the 40s, I wouldn't have the hang-ups I've got today, I can tell you that. And count me in for the crowd and abhors a stack of premiere videos in my YouTube feed. Stop it, people. Yeah, this is where I'm getting stuff in my feed. Lots of shit. Yeah. I have a video recommendation for you. Retro Blasting did a good show about DVD rot. It's not their normal subject matter, but I enjoyed how deep Michael, the host, went into examples of discs he bought that were already unplayable. Check it out. I will check it out, but I know an awful lot about disc rot as well. Well, I can tell you an awful lot about it from a Laserdisc perspective. They call it laser rot, and it's not really that. It's a manufacture process, and there was only so many places in the country, in the world, that actually made laserdiscs, unlike CDs, which were everywhere, right? And there was certain studios that used a certain manufacturer that meant that their discs were prone to rot. Okay, and what is rot? It's where that silver backing, which is not a backing at all, it's actually inside the plastic cover, rots away and makes holes. Now, a lot of people who didn't understand what was going on in the early days used to put their CDs up at the light and they say, see those pinholes coming through? That's rot. No, those were the early CDs where a little dot was there as a break for the laser to indicate the track end. Laser rot, just like anything that rots, does not leave a perfect dot. It eats away, so it frays. So you can see rot. And it was prone, I think it was to Warner Brothers for Laserdiscs. But it was due to a manufacturer that was basically disbanded with, and therefore a big percentage of Laserdiscs are prone to laser rot. Not from Japan. They're exempt. I don't know many PAL discs that also weren't exempt, because we produced so few. But in America, where Warner used them quite extensively, and I think Paramount or Universal did to an extent, you've got a mix of titles that fall under the you could have rot on your disc. 20th Century Fox wasn't one of those, and that meant that a lot of my collection, like my Star Wars Definitive Collection, which come with a book and it cost me 185 quid, no rot on them at all. In fact, I've only ever seen rot on one of my discs ever, so that I can remember. Yeah, so I've been very lucky. But I would definitely watch that, because any inbuilt, like knowledge that I might not have remembered in my statement just now or never heard before, welcome. I love learning things. It's brilliant. I heard an interesting gaming question last week that I'd like to ask you. If you found yourself in a room with 1,000 gamers, what game would you say you were better at than them or at playing? That is a great question to the wrong person, because that would be fantastic for Mamemeister, who I think is an exceptional player when you consider that week on week he's asked to play games he's never seen in his life, let alone how far he can get in the games that he loves. Now, I've only ever said that I've been good at really 3 or 4 or 5 games. So that out of quickness, one of those is Gyrus in the arcades. Metagalactic Llama's Battle at the Edge of Time on the VIC-20. Oh, yeah. Give me half an hour and I think I could get myself back up to speed with that, and I would kick a few asses in that game. Yeah, Metagalactic Llama's Battle at the Edge of Time. Gyrus. Give me as well a half-hour practice, and I think I'd fare well with ghosts and goblins, but not against the world beaters. Do you know what I mean? I'm talking usually, even if I've been away from the game for 6 months, um, I can get to the end of the first level and into the second level before I've lost 1 credit. Yeah, that game is exceptionally hard. But I'm not the gamer that I was, and I'm not the gamer now either. Everything I play is open world. You can't really die. You just respawn. And that's made me probably an incredibly lazy gamer where death was death and you were dead. That was it. So, brilliant one. Thank you so much, Kev. Great question. And we're down to the last two. Martroid now. Sorry to hear about your mum. Haven't had the best of weeks, Dal. Bless you both. I'm beaming with a massive smile, knowing that you'll be doing a vid on the Jeff Minter story. So cheers for that. Of course, we're about 12 hours ahead of you lot over the side of the globe. I'll be hopefully be downloading it at the earliest opportune moment. Always keep up the good work, mate. You're a treasure. And that's interesting to note because you've got it now. I don't know what your feelings are on it. I've got it. I've played it. It's on several platforms: PS5, Xbox, Switch, PC, just to name 4. I wonder which one you bought it on. Yeah, interesting. Keep us surprised. Love to know. And that video on Jeff Minter will be coming. In fact, I'm going to show it you at the end, just quickly if we've got time. And then we've got, I think his name is, I did write it down, Danny Jukes, I think. He's put great video, mate. And I do apologise because I could have just clicked on his picture. It would have took me to that. And that's the end of the questions. So we now move on to what we watched on YouTube. Like I say, this shouldn't take too much longer, but I am going to just take a small break. My nose is filled, and I just want to blow my nose and just pat my face with a bit of water. So I'll be back in just a second. It'll seem like seconds, but I'm back. And I'm so glad I took a little break because I just splashed my face and just looked at my phone. And then a little advert came up to watch this person. And his name is Matthias Kranz. And it's one that might interest my friend Nigel, who's a bass player. He's an engineer and decided to expand something that was happening in the Beatles at the time, where an engineer came in and thought of a spinning guitar neck. In other words, why have two frets joined together for bass and guitar? Why not have a spinning neck where you can spin it around and it'll be bass on one and guitar on the other? And it's called 360-degree spinning guitar neck is incredible. So he's gone through all of the design faults that could happen with it. And I haven't watched the end of it yet, but my God, it's interesting. All of the things that could go wrong with it. You know, he's got barrel roll, instability, pickups, tuning, everything that you can imagine that could go wrong with a design, with a cylindrical neck for a guitar that spins. So I'm going to watch that at the end. But anyway, what we do now is we will do watched on YouTube. And to be quite honest, I've told you before, I've taken a step back, mostly from the video side of things, but only because I just needed some time. And I'll probably go back. But this format will therefore be a little bit less. So we just start off with the 2 that I normally watch, which is This Week in Retro and Techmoan. And believe it or not, Techmoan did do a video last week, but it came out on the Sunday. and I forgot to include it in even this one. But if I remember rightly, it was a tape playing boombox that was brought out in Japan called the RX-8, I think, and that's from memory, where you put in a cassette, and it had two cassettes, one for recording and one for playback, and it was a domed speaker setup. In other words, it had a pyramid upside down so that it played the sound out of the whole circle, and that's so that people that sat round in a group that were wanting to do karaoke round a sofa, say, could hear everybody from whichever side they were at, because it was up front facing, and it was great. So sorry I haven't really mentioned it, but do go and watch Tech Moan's channel. It's absolutely brilliant. This week in retro, of course, I watched, and that had EA on Steam. Yes, EA, Electronic Arts, have brought out a number of their collections onto Steam, which you could always get on the Origin or sometimes the Epic label. They've started to bring some of their older titles like Command and Conquer back that you can buy. And I think a few of my friends that are friendly with me on Steam, I look at the activity channel and some people have bought Command and Conquer again. I already bought the physical release 17 versions of Command and Conquer. I bought it on the Origin label, which had some enhancements, and I haven't bought it again since. And I don't know if there's anything extra in them, but it's certainly something I might take a look at. But other than that, EA on Steam, there was Japan Loves Retro and VHS Down Under. I think the VHS Down Under was a museum where they've got VHS tapes, sort of like a mini Blockbusters, but tapes through the ages of films and stuff. In two minds about that, because it can't be a museum like I'd like to see, where films have been banned and you can see the layouts of those. It would have been just tapes and tapes and tapes that would have just been brought out. When you stack all those up, it would just look like a bookshelf type thing. So I don't see that being particularly great. But this week in retro, fantastic as always, stuff that I didn't know about. So really liked it this week. Then another one came up, which was interesting because I talked about my Star Trek, where I went in the Star Trek Adventure. They're doing a tour now, which was introduced by a site named Pretty Cool Vlog, where a guy went round a Star Trek tour, but he went round the Star Trek tour not of the original Star Trek, but of Star Trek Continues, which is a self-fan-made Star Trek site where they built it from the ground up. And he explained the difficulties he had with that, took him around the sets, and explained why Star Trek was so expensive and why it was cancelled. Very interesting. I'm not going to ruin it for you. Definitely worth a watch. Then there was an interesting one, which I always love these, and that is consoles or computers that were going to be made but didn't, and what they were called and why they were disbanded. And there was this one called the Super Stella, or in its manufacturer name before it was disbanded was the Atari 3200. And the title of the channel was called How Powerful Would the Atari 3200 Would Have Been? And they talked about the design, the problems that it had, backward compatibility, what was out at the time, and why it was disbanded, why it was never manufactured. So that was pretty good, pretty cool. Love that. RMC The Cave, like this week in retro, same person, Neil, scratched an itch because I used to like all of the early Amiga flight sims, playing Gunship and TFX and titles like that. And a guy has brought out a game, I think it's called Thunder Helix, which has recreated a game a bit like Gunship, but in modern day, but looking like the old days. So in other words, it moves incredibly slick, like 60 frames a second, but uses those same old polygons, dithering, all of that, like Carrier Command. And it looked immense, incredible. Definitely going to look that one up. And then we get to some of the stuff that I watched of my friends. I watched Rock God, my friend Nige. He did an Evil Dead related item, which I was very interested and intrigued in. I think he might have done some more this week, but I haven't got round to those. Then we got Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who basically he does so much content that I couldn't help but watch a couple of those. But what I watched was the top 10 Jodie Foster films, X-Files Season 1, Episode 11, and Doctor Who and the Daemons. And I'm pretty sure that there was some others in there. But I'll probably get round to watching those today. I've got an itch that I need to get back to my friends because I feel I'm doing them a disservice. I'm not, in regards to the fact that I can watch what I want. But I feel like I'm that friend that's letting them down by not mentioning them. And it really purely is just because of how I'm feeling. The loss of not being involved so much in that era, of films, that seeing the same questions come up, the same guests come up, I've lost my way a bit. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a conversation this week and I'll be brought back to my normal happy self. And I'm looking forward to that. But if it doesn't happen, then I'm thinking that concentrating on what I do best, maybe that's better for me. Watch this space. So I watched Euphoria Pictures, my friend Keith. And I miss talking to him because we talked on Scott's channel. And I helped him out and all of that sort of stuff. But I feel I've lost my connection with him. But he did Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is a title that I've got. And he did an immaculate job. He bought a different version with different cover art, talked about the film, why it's important to him, what the picture quality is like, where you can buy it from, etc., etc. And as I said, you must watch some of these channels because they give you so much information. And when it comes to something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you might learn something that you didn't already know, that you thought you knew, but you didn't. Always good to see another perspective and mindset on something that you feel passionately about yourself. And then, of course, there's my friend Sammy G, and he's gone down a different route now. He's taken an artist, Elvis Costello, and done an album review, and it was a good, long chat about this particular album, the tracks, his love of that person, how he first listened to them, the sounds of it, what memories it brings back, just the sort of thing that you want to see. And then, of course, as I told you, I normally do a watch along, and that was disregarded, which upset us both. But it is what it is. You can't help people being ill. You can't help people being double booked. 2 titles were chosen. We'll be doing those at another time, I'm sure. And my friend Ryan and I had a lovely chat. We talked about a number of subjects like slip covers, Dirty Harry. The people that were in the chat room were very jolly, gave us some questions. We answered them. Brilliant. And that's the end of what I watched, other than what I watched on your YouTube for my friends in the Discord and the computer side of things. And they are down the rabbit hole. Brought back a lot of memories for me because he did a PSP version of Space Invaders Extreme. And I remember having that on the PSP, and I remember having it on the Xbox 360 and having great fun with it. It was definitely a different take on Space Invaders. Definitely fun. Wonderful experience, and it brought back memories. I haven't thought about that game in ages. Yeah, it's a little gem, really. And then he did his little caricature called OB Windows. And he brought up the subject, should I update to Windows 11? Now, I could bring my own take into that. I did leave a comment. You can read it on his channel. I'm not going to read it out verbatim now. But OB Windows is a great character. You've got to watch it. It's a brilliant caricature. Down the rabbit hole, a must. Robert's Retro Gaming, again, been watching less and less. But I did watch all of these, and I'm sorry if I've missed some, Robert. I will be catching up. But they were Minecraft Play episode 112, Minecraft Exile episode 113, Euphoria part 27, 8-Bit Play on Space Cadet, Titan 1, Reverse Eye, Crossfire, Junior Pac-Man. Now, I've probably missed a couple in there, and that's because I'm playing catch-up. But I did get some time last night, and I thought to myself at the end of writing this blog, why not sit back and watch some of my friend's stuff? His came up straight away, and I filled in the blanks, because a lot of that stuff I hadn't watched was the 8-Bit Play, and those are the bits that I used to be most interested in, because I've moved away a little bit from Minecraft and so forth. I rarely load that up now, because I used to have a server, and people didn't want to join it, or couldn't join at that particular time, and my interest waned a little bit. Who knows? I'll probably bring that back. Might buy a server again. Might be interesting. Something to think about. Yeah. Keep that thought. Colin Jones, Ponder. He did his Vblog 66, a welcome edition. I like it when his blogs come up. He only does them once every 3 weeks. So it's great when those crop up, because I have more to say, more to listen to, and an opportunity to interact. So that was definitely interesting. And he did one of his high score kerfuffle type things. This time it was Bagman Strikes Back, which I've got. Bagman Strikes Back on the Commodore 64. And it was interesting to watch him watch. People play these games in different ways, different maneuvers, different styles. So it's great to watch a high score. They're brilliant. Then there's Seb's place. And we can't go anywhere without talking about the production values of Seb's stuff. So he's gone back to doing a comparison between 64 Spectrum and Amstrad. And this time the game that was chosen was Savage. Not a game I'm particularly interested in, because it was a time where I'd moved to the Amiga. I haven't really got caught up with everything that came out on the Commodore 64 while the Amiga was still on the rise. Savage would have been one that I probably would have loved back in the day, but I looked at it and it wasn't my type of game. It was 3 sort of like levels. One was a sideways scrolling platformy thing. The second one was a space harrier type thing. And the third one was where you transformed into an eagle and flew around a bit like Fort Apocalypse. And I mentioned another game title there, but you know what I mean. The mechanics would have made it quite awkward, because you'd have been drifting down all the time. It would have been like Airwolf, the game Airwolf as well. Atrocious control system. And he mentioned all of the positives and the negatives, came up with his order. I don't think he made enough comment about how smooth the scrolling was on the 64 compared to the others, because I think he was in awe that the Spectrum and Amstrad ones had done a pretty good job at scrolling, but you could see it was character scrolling. It was jerky. And I'd have marked it down because of that. Which meant that the order of what was best and what was worse is different to mine, but it weren't far off. But it was on a title that I don't really care too much about. So if you've got any interest at all in retro gaming and comparisons, it's a must watch. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely gorgeous. And I urge you to go and watch it. And then we've got my friend Mamemeister, who's done quite a bit this week. There was Shoot 'em Ups You Need to Play, which was Raiden 3. Friday's Waffle, Sunday's live stream, which I only caught the last part of, but I mentioned it because I was there and I did watch it. a Nice and Nasty podcast with Jamie Hampshire, is that right? Hampshire, yeah. Which was interesting because I like the podcast because they talk about games that you'd be stuck on a desert island with, the top three, and then three that should be wiped off of the existence of reality, and for whatever reason. So that's the end of that. Definitely worth a watch. Mamemeister is. The only downside I've got with his Friday waffle, and it's a pity. It's a nitpicky thing, very nitpicky. He was taken aback by a comment that somebody had made about the Mister, which is an emulation sort of like console thing, which is as close to the real thing as you could possibly get because it uses FPGA. Now, he did a comparison by saying that he wasn't a snob just because he didn't have a proper Commodore 64 out and played the games on them. But he said it was similar to snobbery of film watching and music, for which I've got an objection to. And that's because I'm personally attached to physical media and the snobbery of music. I totally agree with why the simile is there, but I think I think you avoid it like the plague if it was me. And the reason for that is I buy physical media because I want the film to be in as good a place as it possibly can be. If you go down the streaming route, you kill physical media. If you go down the streaming route, you get compressed data, which means the film does not look great or sound great. It sounds and looks okay to a lot of people, but people like me notice it, and it is bad. So it's not about the player itself. It's more about the differences between the two, which emulation I don't think has. Emulation is now so close that you might as well play it on an emulator. In fact, it's more convenient to do so. Streaming is convenient, but there is a leap and a huge Grand Canyon one between the quality of a streaming film and the quality of a film you buy on physical media, which is why I'd avoid it like the plague. And my friend Ian the Hill Ramblings has also noticed that there is a snobbery in music. A lot of people now that have YouTube channels talk nothing but vinyl. It's got to be coloured. It's got to be vinyl. You've got to have the best turnstile. And it is so much better than CDs. CDs was the thing that we bought for years and years and years, and is now almost a swear word, which it shouldn't be. So Ian brought out a channel last week of why I love CDs. And I still love my CDs. I wouldn't go past them. I do like vinyl. It's just I avoid again the battle of the playground battle of, oh, you've bought the CD of it, I've got the vinyl of it, etc. Nonsense. It's the music, how it sounds to you, what equipment you play it on. I've got a record player, but it's in storage. I've got a CD player, and I play it through my amp. Sounds gorgeous. And I can stream MP3. And I've got nothing really against those as well. I'm not, just like Mamemeister was saying, not a snob in regards to people that collect MP3s, but I have been a collector of vinyl and I have been a collector of CDs. And I wouldn't say I'm a collector of MP3s. I've downloaded them for convenience so I can listen to them on my headset while I'm walking along on my phone. I rarely play an MP3 to play through my amp. I'll get the CD out. And that's the nitpick. And it is a minor nitpick, but it is, I think, worth mentioning because the physical media thing got to me. Really got to me, because there is a Everest climb difference to the argument about emulation and that. So that's all I've got to say about it. Now, we move on now to the bits where I'm going to show you the trailers. And I forgot that you wouldn't have seen the actual things I bought, so I've got to go and get them. So just bear with me a moment. Because I had to do it twice, didn't I? So you wouldn't see these covers, and I haven't set up my other camera, so I'm going to have to do it through this camera. So the ones I bought were Wonka Steelbook. Two minds about whether this one's a great film or not. I think it's a pretty good picture. It's enjoyable. For the kiddies, brilliant. For people that saw Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Willy Wonka, less so, because we remember those tunes, we remember those images. We knew Gene Wilder. We thought of him as the uncle that we'd love to visit if you had a chocolate factory. I don't feel these vibes, but I'm of a different age. I'm more the granddad that takes Charlie to the chocolate factory than Charlie himself. You see what I mean? So I think that's one of the reasons people have got a headache about Wonka, and why people call it Wanker. But there we go. It's two minds, but you can't turn around and say that the Steelbook looks bloody awful. And the picture quality and sound is great. Now we get to a pristine picture, and that is Stand By Me. Picture's nice, not as colourful as Wonka, but it shouldn't be. Happy to have this in my collection. I've had Stand By Me on VHS. I've had it on DVD. I've had it on Blu-ray. I've had it on Blu-ray Steelbook, and now I've got it on Blu-ray 4K. So I'm happy to have that. Then there is Godzilla. Picture quality not brilliant on this one. This is purely because it fits in with my monster films of Godzilla and King Kong. And it reminds me that there are people out there that can be fans of a subject like Godzilla and monsters, and make a film that a fan would have offense to, because this film is really Independence Day with Godzilla, and if that's what you want to look at, that's great, but Godzilla is more than that. And then there's a really old film which has got a lovely cover, which is Guns of Navarone, which is a classic David Niven, fantastic film. Who else was it? It was David Niven. Oh yeah, Anthony Quinn, that's right. Yeah. And Gregory Peck, and they won Best Actors, I think, and Supporting Actors in that year. One of those Stayport films that I watch at bank holidays, when you watch Where Eagles Dare and The Eiger Sanction and Kelly's Heroes and all of those sort of like war films. Patton comes to mind. So yeah, those were the four films. I now take you to the trailers, don't I? So I need to get myself set up for that. Switch cams. There we go. And I'm going to shut up and let you watch a few trailers. Hopefully there's some good ones in here for you this week. I missed doing these. I'm so sorry it wasn't in last week. But here we go.
I've spent the past 7 years traveling the world perfecting my craft. You see, I'm something of a magician, inventor, and chocolate maker. So quiet up and listen down. Nope, scratch that, reverse it.
Mr. Wonka, I can see you're a man of great ingenuity.
What are you doing?
I'm making chocolate, of course. How do you like it? Dark, white, nutty, absolutely insane.
Many people have come here to sell chocolate. They've all been crushed by the chocolate cartel. You can't get a shop without selling chocolate, and you can't sell chocolate without a shop.
No daydreaming.
What are we gonna do, Willie?
Huh.
Huh?
Huh.
A double huh.
Do you have a pencil and paper?
Uh-huh.
I got an idea. I know things haven't been easy for you. They're gonna get better.
You promise?
I pinky promise. That's the most solemn vow there is.
Where do we start?
A good chocolate chip is simple.
Where's this?
It's just weird.
What's happening? Who wants a chocolate that makes you fly?
Let's find out, shall we?
Who's for a hover
Nothing to see here. Just a small group of people defying the laws of gravity.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Gallery Gourmet, my name is Willy Wonka.
He's good. Too good.
Pretty sure I've gained about 150 pounds in the last 2 weeks.
You could change her life, Mr. Wonka. Change all their lives.
Run away!
Every good thing in this world started with a dream. So you hold on to yours.
Here we go, Mama.
Mark my words, this is gonna be the greatest chocolate shop the world has ever seen. So you're the funny little man who's been following me.
I will have you know that I am a perfectly respectable size for an Oompa Loompa.
An Oompa what now?
Allow me to refresh your memory.
Oh, I don't think I want to hear that.
Too late. I've started dancing now. Once we've started, we can't stop.
In all our lives, there's a fall from innocence, a time after which we are never the same. It happened in the summer of 1959, a long time ago.
Oh man, where do you hear this? Where do you hear this? What is it, man? You guys want to go see a dead body?
When the night has come and the land is dark.
We interrupt to bring you an update on the search for the missing 12-year-old Ray Brower.
Kid's gone, they're never gonna find him. Not where they're looking.
And the moon is the only light we'll see.
You think Mighty Mouse could beat up Superman?
Mighty Mouse is a cartoon. Superman is a real guy. No way a cartoon could beat up a real guy.
Darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. We're gonna be famous. We're gonna be on every radio and TV show in the country.
I still don't think we should go.
If I can only have one food for the rest of my life, that's easy. Pass. Cherry flavored pass. No question about it.
I like to go someplace where nobody knows me. We found him. We got dibs.
Better start running, Eyeball. They got dibs.
There's 4 of us, Eyeball. You just make your move.
You're dead.
For some, it's the last real taste of innocence.
I'm never gonna get out of this town, am I, Gory? You can do anything you want, man.
And the first real taste of life.
This is really a good time.
The most. A blast.
But for everyone, it's the time that memories are made of.
So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
Carl Foreman's The Guns of Navarone. The greatest high adventure of our time. With a cast as exciting as the story it tells. Gregory Peck. David Niven. Anthony Quinn. Stanley Baker. Anthony Quayle. James Darren. Irene Pappas, Gia Scala, Alistair MacLean's best-selling novel, Live to the Hilt on the Islands of the Aegean Sea.
This is Gregory Peck speaking. And I'd like to tell you something about The Guns of Navarone, because it's the most unusual film in which I've ever appeared. I play the role of Mallory, the man whose job it is to lead 6 expert cutthroats and saboteurs on a desperate and impossible mission.
Watch out!
What makes it even more desperate and impossible is that some of us hate each other even more than we do the enemy.
That's a pretty good partner you've got there yourself.
He's going to kill me when the war is over.
You think that you've been getting away with it all this time, standing by. Well, son, your bystanding days are over. You're in it now, up to your neck. They told me that you're a genius with explosives. Start proving it. You got me in the mood to use this thing. And by God, if you don't think of something, I'll use it on you.
The Guns of Navarone is crowded with action and excitement, but it is even more than great adventure. Over and above its tremendous thrill, this is a story of human beings, each with his intense personal fears, his deep personal conflicts, each with his moments of triumph and tenderness. This is a story of unrivaled courage and suspense.
Help!
Give up quietly, gentlemen, unless you want a great many innocent people killed as well as yourselves.
Everybody stay exactly where you are. The party's over. Somebody's stepped on the cake, which means that there is a traitor in this room.
The Guns of Navarone, I promise you, is probably the most exciting film you will ever see.
There we go. And I purposely put Godzilla at the end after Guns of Navarone to show that the Guns of Navarone and Godzilla, the difference in years between the two trailers is 37 years. And I don't know about you, but I'm more excited about watching the Guns of Navarone than I am about Godzilla. But then again, that's what foresight does for you. If you ever watch Godzilla, it's the tone of it does have all those sequences, or a lot of those sequences you see in the trailer, but the tone of the film is totally different to what you see. And the Guns of Navarone I've watched, and I tell you what, the tone of that film is pretty much what you saw. One was more honest than the other, if you see what I mean. The other one, it sort of like screams at you, this is Godzilla, watch me, because I'm a spectacle. And then when you go and watch it, it's talky bollocks, really. Is probably the best way to explain it. And I like Godzilla. I watch it. It's just it's a disappointment to me. And I was going to end it there, but I remembered something that one of my friends mentioned. I think it was Martroid. And he wanted to know, am I going to do a video on a title that came out literally on Wednesday? For which I have actually now bought it. I don't know if I can show it. Yeah, there we go. So that's my Steam library front end. And in my library, you can see I've got something here, and it's called the Jeff Minter story, Llama Soft. And it wasn't that much of a sale. It was like 15% off. But Jeff Minter, anybody who knows me knows how I feel about Jeff Minter. So basically, I definitely bought it, and all I can really do is just say to you what I think of it. I will do a video on it, but it's Digital Eclipse who have put this together. Have basically taken clips of the new Jeff Minter documentary, along with some new fresh interviews, and cobbled it together into a timeline of games that Jeff Minter did, for which there are 40 odd to play. But you've also got videos, pictures, and all sorts of backstory. And it's half the price of the Atari 50th anniversary, which did that same thing. So if I hit play, hopefully this works. You can probably see what I mean, because I don't want to give too much away. Hopefully it plays. There we go. That's it. The documentary is called Heart of Neon. If you load up one of my games and see a big camel or whatever, you know immediately who's created it. I've always tried to put a bit of myself into my games. Jeff Minter. Couldn't say that better myself. There we are. So you got the Jeff Minter story, and it says press A to start. You press A, and you've got the menu, and you can see at the top you can play the games immediately without going for any gameology. Or you can go for it like a documentary. So you can click on the early years, which will bring up a timeline, and then you can go through the documentary, like introduction to meet Jeff Minter, and you'll see that there is a video that you can play if I press A, and then you can go into these pictures and zoom them around, pan into them, zoom in and out, and you just learn a little bit about him, where he lived, find out about his family. I didn't know that he lived near a nuclear plant. He was a brat of a kid living next to this where his dad worked, talking about how he used to like climbing over the fence to play the games in the recreational area, and then going through all of the years. So he starts off with the Commodore PET, learning BASIC, and some of the very early games. And like I say, you can actually just go straight play the games. You can press X and you can actually play these games. It's 40 of them. So, and then I think the last one is a special to this collection, which is an old game, Grid Runner, given a new called Grid Runner Remastered, which gives you a sort of look at the old game and how it can look in a modern time. So I might just play that one. There we go. I won't be any good. I've only loaded it once. There we go. Christ, already. Ah. Or you can play it in the old way like this. This is how I used to play it. Christ. I think it probably is much harder playing it in the remastered way than it is the other way. Christ. Admit, brings back many memories, happy memories as well. Oh, there we are. We'll go back to that. So we'll just go back to the other view if I can do it. Don't know quite how you come out of this. There we go. Quit. Yes. Then back. Yes. And then we'll go back to camera view. There we go. So I hope you like that little insight. Obviously, I'll play the game a little bit more. Go through the emulation a little bit. Look at the story. And hopefully I'll be bringing that out shortly. My opinion of it at the moment is, if you're a fan, definitely go and buy this. If you're worried about which one to get, apparently all of them, even on the consoles, is great. I think it probably suits the Switch more, just because of its portability, the screen, the fact that you can actually broadcast the Switch to a screen if you need to. It's probably the most versatile, and it doesn't have any games in it that would slow that console down. From my point of view, I'm happy that I bought it on Steam and on the PC. And I'm looking forward to it. And with that, I'm going to say salute, give you your week back and say thank you for watching. Hopefully this turns out. Hopefully you're going to be watching this very, very shortly. And with that, thank you so much. Bye-bye.